Help, I need somebody. Man, the first time I heard John Lennon scream help from the stereo speakers on my aunt's little close and play, I was hooked. It's really the first memory I have of music moving me and giving me goosebumps and that whole magic that comes with a great song. I was probably 7 or 8 in the early 70s when that song came out in July of 65, but I didn't hear it until I was probably 7 or so, somewhere around 71 or something. But at my grandparents' farm, upstairs, my Aunt Faye's room, that little close and play I talked about with the hinges, speakers that would hinge out and point in whatever direction you want them. She'd pull out the 45s, mostly Beatles, because she was one of those screaming, crying teenage girls that all loved. She was a Paul McCartney girl, but they all loved the Beatles. Anyhow, I didn't care about any of that. I was just hanging out in her room. She put that record on, Lennon yells help, and I'm hooked. I'm like, what is this? It actually became the first song I ever knew all the words to. Again, 7 or 8 years old. I just loved it. And it was something that I thought about a lot years later. I didn't really become a musician until I was in my 40s. I started playing drums when I was 11, and I was okay, fairly adequate. Played in college and bands and kind of worked on it. Really got into songwriting in my 20s. And even though I love the Beatles, they weren't a major inspiration. You'd think they would be. I guess in some ways they were with the fact that I got hooked on them so early. But, as I grew in my songwriting career and started looking back at all the greats, of course they were right there up at the top. Lennon and McCartney had a sensibility for hooks and for lyrics and harmonies and song structure that made them Lennon and McCartney, the greatest duo in the history of rock and roll songwriting. Right up there with Bernie Taupin and Elton John and so many others, but they're the guys. So as time went on, I grew to appreciate them way more. And that song always resurfaced. The urgency that he has, the anxiety coming from it. Lennon talked about, that song came out in 1965 in July, and already then they were feeling the pressures of success and the anxiety that came with it and fame. And, they struggled with it, particularly John Lennon. And he said that song was actually Cry for Help when he wrote it. So that's kind of cool. But I think I felt that urgency and that just that anxiety that came in that song. But man, the hook and the harmonies, just Ringo's drumming, it just doesn't get any better. But first memory of songwriting and of knowing what it felt like to be moved by music. What a great memory. I can literally vividly picture it now, even though it's 50 years later. And I'm grateful for it. So I'd love to hear what your thoughts are, down in the comments. What's the first piece of music that moved you? The first book you that you read that moved you? Or a poem? It's all about the words, man, and they are what hook us. Certainly music can, passages, whatever, but it's all about the words when it comes down to it. So let me know what you dig. I hope if you haven't listened to Help in a long time, because I'm sure you've heard it, go back and listen to it. And if you're kind of new to music and you haven't really dug into the Beatles yet, Help is still part of the early period, but it paved the way for Rubber Soul and all the good stuff that came afterwards as I got more and more deeply into songwriting. So I think it's a gem, one of their best. Rolling Stone rated it number 29 of the best all-time songs ever written. And there's a reason for that. So go check out Help. Peace, everybody. Thanks for hanging out. We'll see you next time.